to welcome Rev Judith Elia, who's going to be speaking to us about, and I'm going to get it right this time, I am, therefore I think.
So many of you are used to Rene Descartes' first principle, I think, therefore I am, which he, at the time in the 17th century, admits came from his radical doubt of his own existence. He had many meditations on the meaning of life, many doubts, confusions, and delusions that led him to this discovery. I think, therefore I am. And this statement became a fundamental element of Western philosophy and conveniently provided a focus for theology and for science to relieve themselves of radical doubt. It seems that the very act of doubting one's own existence on a physical level, thinking that we are dreaming ourselves or we are being dreamed ourselves, so deeply disturbed people that they had to hold on to this proof, because if I can think, then therefore I must exist. That idea is antithetical to what we now know to be true, which is we exist. Therefore we think. And thoughts come and thoughts go, and they create emotion, which also goes and comes. And also thoughts have a physiology, a chemistry, a biology. So actually by thinking, we're creating our physical reality. And if that doesn't disturb you enough, how about the new physics research where just looking at something changes the outcome of the research? Just looking at it a particular way will change the outcome of what you find. So it is true that we exist as thinking beings, but it also is true that we are more than that. It's interesting that spiritually, in many traditions, there is this idea that Moses had at the burning bush. I am that I am. That's what God's name was at the burning bush. When Moses was up on the top of the mountain and he saw this bush that was burning but couldn't be consumed, which represents an eternal truth, something that can't be destroyed in the ordinary way. Fire usually would consume a bush. And the bush speaks to Moses and says, Soham, or Tat Twat Asi. I am that I am. I have always had a question in my heart about the meaning of life, as I know many of you have, because otherwise you would not be here at this particular church. You would be asleep and not care, right? As we often are. But there are those times in our lives when the outer world becomes so confusing that we must ask these existential questions that catapult us to greater and greater intelligences, and also greater and greater well-being, or not. Because what we're finding with all that's happening to our world right now is that some people get stronger, they have resilience, and other people get weaker. That there is this amazing capacity of stress, regardless of what it is, whether it's fear of the coronavirus or the last hurricane, or if you're in California, fire evacuations, or wherever you are in the world, there's something happening. You know, if you're Ukrainian or Russian or anywhere in Europe right now, that's a really big stress. And so what happens is that psychologically, some people have the capacity for post-traumatic strength. And some people get completely depressed, energetically depleted, biologically and psychologically disturbed deeply in ways they have never been before. And all that's happening to all of us right now, sometimes to all of us every day. Okay. But what we're learning from all of these many traumatic events that are catapulting us to new strength and understanding is that intelligence is multiplicities of qualities and characteristics. And those who possess resilience share certain qualities that can be identified and learned. And among them are cognitive capacities that have to be developed and that are not innate. And these different qualities are not just cognitive. Some of them are interpersonal, intrapersonal, and some of them are beyond the physical. And that there are practices that can help us to open our awareness to all these different forms of intelligences. And there's a substantive body of work now that demonstrates that meditation, contemplative practices, music, especially chanting and sacred music, concentration techniques, what we might call mindfulness practices in a large body of knowledge, kind of that word is really overused, but meditative and contemplative practices like loving kindness, compassion, many of the martial arts, what we call Qigong, which are energetic practices and breath practices, slow, continuous movement that helps us to slow down and notice different things than our ordinary mind notices. Yoga, creative arts, relational practices, like you're doing this afternoon, heart talks, centering the community. So all of these things, this great body of research we now have is teaching us that contribute to overall wellness for human beings. And that intelligence is not an all or nothing quality. It comprises different skills that can be possessed to varying degrees by one person and can be inhibited and intentionally enhanced or inhibited by education, by training, by our society, by our media to a great extent. So just think about it, because we go through our lives going, that person bad, that person good, that situation bad, that situation good. When really, intelligent people understand they are constantly in flux, more like an ecosystem than a particle. Intelligences include mental, emotional, physical, kinesthetic, sensory motor, spiritual, social, relational, cultural, geopolitical, perceptual, intuitional, nutritional, systemic, abstract, holistic, technological, historical, global, and that's just a few words, right? Intelligence is all of that. If you have made an opinion about something based on some media slang or somebody's opinion you think you respect, but you're not doing the research on it, or if you did it from a gut feeling, or you did it based on information you got from our current educational system, I'm sorry to say, or our current textbooks, I'm sorry to say, there is a lot of information that has been programmed into us that is so outdated, irrelevant, and immature. So, in order for you and I to embrace this new holistic awareness of intelligences of people and the planet and species other than us, like plants and dolphins and whales that think too, we have to begin to recognize that we have to open ourselves up to intuition, to cognitive reappraisal, which is the recognition of my own negative response and my own interpretation of a situation, and reframe it to have a more open mind. For me personally, one of the most disturbing moments in this last couple of years has not been the pandemic, has not been the war in Ukraine. It's been the way that people can't talk about it. The way that vaxxing and anti-vaxxing has become a red in the face, I can't be in the same room with you, reality. And that there have been so many barriers in the way of intelligent, multidimensional understanding. And the barriers have been the propaganda that have sold each one of us, whatever your side, into a way of thought that may or may not be true. So for us right now in this particular frame of reality that we're in, where we're trying to break through, I think, therefore I am, to I am, therefore I think, I feel, I make choices, I recalibrate, I'm influenced by the world around me, I am in flux. We have to stop believing everything we think. We have to stop believing everything other people tell us to think. Because we continually view ourselves as static entity, when in fact we're a dynamic system constantly in flux, we hold ourselves back from being all that we can be. And one of the most fabulous, I think, awarenesses that we're coming to is that we influence each other in community. Like the experiment I shared with you before, a group of positively intentioned people can bring forth the light and heal each other in now demonstrable ways. That if you and I come together and we pray, for lack of a better word, we affirm positively health in each other, before we leave that room, many of us will have better blood oxygen level, lower blood pressure, and our hearts will be in a healthier place. That's the truth. And we don't know what that light is, but we can see it. We can actually, through Kirlian photography, see a group of people who bring in the light. And those people can also take toxic metals and toxic things out of water. And many of us doubt those things are possible because of our Western mind because of the way we have been thought and that we think we are. We think we have to have scientific evidence in the old form of Copernicus science. And that's the way we look at the world still. Putin bad, Biden good, Democrats good, Republicans bad. Whatever it is, one-dimensional intelligence. At the core of human intelligence is a certain spirit, and that enables the human species to transform and to grow. In Lakota, they say it's Daku Wakan Ska Ska. Something sacred is always changing us. They also say unmerited divine assistance is always available. We have to ask. We have to connect, whether it's with a tree, whether it's with an ancestor, whether it's with something you call God, Goddess, Spirit. You have to make the intention or it will never happen for you. You may be influenced if you're around enough people who are making those connections, though, because it can have a positive impact on you just to be in a community of people who are positively focused to help humanity move in the direction of love, of peace, of joy, and of integrity. A very important word for our time, which is so hypocritical and delusional. So here are a few words in closing from the former president of Czechoslovakia, the first president of the Czech Republic, the first democratically elected president of either country, written from jail. By Václav Havel, author, playwright, and dissident, and former president of all those things. He was imprisoned as a political prisoner and wrote these words. The kind of hope I often think about, especially in situations which are particularly hopeless, like prison, is a state of mind, not a state of the world. Either we have it or we don't. It's a dimension of the soul. It's not dependent on some particular observation of the world or estimate of the situation. It's not prognostication. It's an orientation of the heart, of the spirit. It transcends the world immediately experienced, and it's anchored somewhere beyond. Hope, in this deep and powerful sense, is not the same thing as joy that things are going well, or willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously headed for success, but rather, and I think many of you have this, an ability to work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance of success. The more unpropitious the situation in which we demonstrate hope, the deeper it is, the more substantial. Hope is definitely not the same as optimism. It's not the conviction that something will turn out well, but it is the belief that certainly something makes sense to do, regardless of how it turns out. In short, the deepest and most important form of intelligence the only one that can keep us above water and urge us in the direction of good works, the only true source of the heart opening, breathtaking dimensions of the human spirit is something that we get elsewhere. It's only this kind of intelligence which gives us strength to live and continually try new things, think in creative ways, as Einstein would say, have imagination, and which can give us the strength to continually, even in conditions that seem hopeless, to be fully present here and now with strength with each other.